Can you hear that?
Yes.
It's coming and going for me.
Same here.
Any better?
That's better. Not as beautiful as it sounded live, but yes.
You were there?
Yes, I was there. And I got similar video.
Oh, okay. Should have asked you for yours. There's Kevin.
No, you're all right.
Whoops.
What are you doing? Just wondering.
All right, so that's all I'll try to do of that because it doesn't seem to be working that well for me. But we are back here.
I think we have zoo bombers.
Whoa, echo here.
I think we have zoo bombers.
Oh, so it would be Zoom bound.
Oh, well, okay, so I was just going to finish telling the story of this young man, Kevin Higgins, that you could see there on your screen playing the violin. Is that he was walking, he's got this on video too, he was walking towards a rally one night, noticed that the cops were swarming the rally. Are you guys hearing an echo?
Just say an opinion. We should fund the police.
You unmuted?
It's muted.
Not sure why I'm echoing. But anyway, somebody must have had something on there. So
We should fund the police.
what's that?
We should fund the police.
It sounds to me like someone's crashed.
We're being bombed, but you know, yeah, we fund them plenty, so don't worry about that.
Oh,
Fund
gotcha.
the
I was gonna say, so you can.
Black lives don't matter. 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 Hey, black lives don't matter.
Suzanne,
Black lives.
can you take Vance Walker off the call?
Yeah.
I think he left. He was just gonna be a
Damn
bum.
you, bitch. White lives matter.
All right.
You
So that's
are-
what they call about Zoom bombing.
Nah, you're being hacked, bitch. Fuck you.
Mom didn't teach you any better? Quit cussing at people.
We can't hear, you're muted.
You got to press the space bar or do something like that to unmute in order for your mic to trigger.
Oh, sorry about that. So Bob was telling the story of what happened to the young man that was playing the violin.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hear.
But anyway, I've got two cases like this. In both cases, a young black man is filming and walking up to an event, sees the police brutalizing people, turns around and leaves quickly. And the police, of course, beat, mace, and abuse them. So the police also in Columbus, some of you may know, have moved to using rioting charges to massively overcharge people. and usually it's in direct proportion to how much they're brutalizing those people. So again, this is a clear pattern. Some of you may know Sean Walton and Ed Foreman and Fred Guinness and other attorneys are filing in federal court. There's a major lawsuit that's going forward because of the brutalization, the use of the knee knockers and into people's, directly into their bodies, as opposed to using them as intended to skim. So he was arrested. Primarily his crime appears to be recording police brutality and then trying to leave before he got caught up in it.
So Bob's and Connie, and there's many other lawyers in town that are representing many of the protesters. But I did want to talk about some things that were positive that happened since our last salon, which are just sort of unprecedented things that happened. The pipelines, there's 3 pipelines that they've decided not to go forward with.
At least temporarily.
What'd you say, Mark? Did you say something? And then a lot of Columbus statues coming down, which is very interesting to us here at the Free Press, because we have, for years, have been trying to talk people into, talk the powers that be to take these statues down. And just wanted to bring up a couple of our former Free Press, whoops. Okay. I was not drawing on the screen.
Our meeting is being hacked.
Okay, let me get rid of some of the people that are here. We must be pretty popular to be having people bother to hack us. They must be pretty threatened by us.
Yes, you have been hacked, and we got your IP addresses. We got your address. We will order pizzas to your house.
You may need to start and let individuals on as you know who they are, instead of just letting everybody come on, because the word, you know, this link is out there. People know that we're meeting.
So David, the person named David K.
I got it, David K. Yeah, let me get rid of
Right.
it.
Shut the fuck up, you nigger.
Yeah, get David K off.
Trying to, oh, he left.
Shut the fuck up.
Well, your mom's very proud of you, David.
Yeah.
Your mom's very proud of you.
Yes.
David K
Yes,
will come.
I know.
David K
I
will
know.
come back on
She's
as
proud of
somebody
you.
else.
Shut the fuck
David,
So
I'm sure you would just love to meet me and my 357 reasons to fuck your ass over.
Amen, brother.
That I'm not having any luck.
We may have to restart.
Yes, that means that we're making a difference.
Anybody else want to step up? Do it now.
I may have gotten them out of there. Okay, so I was going to share this screen with you just real quick. This is back from 1992 when we were promoting to get rid of the Santa Maria, oh dear, and the Columbus statue.
Yeah, find it.
Come on. And maybe we'll just move on to our speakers. I'm trying to figure out who the last.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the last person. Who up there, don't you know?
Sorry, getting rid of people that I don't recognize their names. Okay, so Bob was going to go ahead and introduce our first speakers, who are also on the subject of what's going on out there with the protests and the police. Mia.
Mia Santiago will be speaking on behalf of the Columbus Freedom Coalition. I'll let her speak for the group, tell you what they're up to, and take questions. Go ahead, Mia.
Hi, my name's Mia Santiago. My pronouns are they, them, and I do work with the Columbus Freedom Coalition. We are an abolitionist group based here in Columbus, Ohio. We formed to work to end all forms of state-sanctioned violence and to build a world without police or prisons. So I guess I can tell you all how we started. We started in early 2019 after the murder of 16-year-old Julius Tate Jr. at the hands of CPD SWAT officer Eric Richards, during which he claims was a sting operation. We then worked to get the charges against Julius's then 16-year-old girlfriend, Masonique Saunders, dropped. CPD charged her with Julius's death through felony murder, even though she didn't pull the trigger. So we organized around that, and we continue to organize for justice for Julius with his family. As a group, we're engaged in a couple other endeavors right now. We have a letter writing campaign with people who are incarcerated across Ohio. Originally, this was part of a larger campaign with Free Them All 614, but it's sort of fallen under the umbrella of CFC now. So this involves corresponding with people regularly with maybe 15 to 20 people who are incarcerated across Ohio at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, Allen and Marion. You can read the product of some of this work in a piece that I and another coalition member, Jane Borden, wrote that's up at The Guardian, that includes a lot of different quotes mixed together that show what it's like to be in prison right now with COVID at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. So that there's a link to that up at The Guardian. In addition, we have a Medium blog now, and that's called, if you search Columbus Freedom Coalition on Medium, you can find that. And it's called Letters from the Inside, COVID-19 and the Carceral State. And that is where we are publishing letters directly from people who are incarcerated to get their voices heard and out there. We are fundraising to provide direct support to everyone inside. And I will have more info on how people can get involved and help with this in a second. We also have some political education projects that we are working on. Coming up soon is a teach-in in conjunction with CPD out of CCS, where we will be talking about the school to prison pipeline. And so that should be the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. We have a few other things in the works, but these are kind of the three main public focuses of the group right now. But so in terms of getting involved, we always need volunteers. We need assistance with the letter writing campaign. Just communicating with people in the prisons across Ohio is very expensive because of the high prices they make you pay to send a letter or receive one. It's also very time consuming. So anyone who can volunteer time for that endeavor, it would be appreciated. Also, the more people we have who can volunteer regularly with that project, the more people we can reach within the prisons, because it's time consuming because you're building relationships with people inside and they need people to hear what's happening, especially in terms of COVID right now. And we also need help filling requests. Often those are legal requests, but they are not necessarily something that you need to be a lawyer to assist with. People have questions about how their cases are going on the outside. So that's something that we can train you with and that you can pretty easily get started on. We also need help with fundraising, always in general. We have a couple different fundraisers set up. So we have the CFC General Fund, Fundly, and that is a fundraising endeavor that is kind of general, and money from that can be used for political education or a number of other projects we're working on. And then there's a GoFundMe that is now set up to go directly to Julius's family. And all of this can be found on the link tree that is up at all of our social media accounts. So you can find us on Facebook if you search Columbus Freedom Coalition, Twitter, we are CBUS Freedom, and Instagram, we are CBUS Freedom Coalition. And then on Medium, if you search Columbus Freedom Coalition. So I don't know if people have questions or what the general format for this is, but I'm happy to answer anything.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go
I'm a
ahead.
long-time activist in the Columbus City scene. I've been active here politically since 1979. I'm a founding member of Columbus Anti-Racist Action, and I have received some questionable reports regarding your organization and the cooperation that you have been claimed to be exhibiting with the Columbus Police Department.
Chris,
And I would
Chris,
like
you
you
got
to
the wrong,
comment.
Chris,
You
you
got
got
the
the wrong
wrong
group.
group.
Wrong group. You're thinking of the Black Freedom group. That's the one that's
So
questionable.
you're attacking the wrong
yeah,
group.
no, yeah, wrong group, Chris.
Yeah, I could clarify, we do not work or communicate with police in any form. A number of us have open cases or have had cases against the CPD. That's not something we're interested in working with. But I do understand your hesitation. What Black Freedom is doing is very alarming. But they're also a newer organization. We've been around for a while now.
Right.
Thank you for the answer.
Okay. Could you go into how you see the current situation and what you see as good strategies and tactics?
Well, I think that the movement that's happening right now is pretty unique because we have so many people who are kind of joining the fold who maybe don't have a connection or tether to a specific group and maybe don't know the best practices for being engaged with direct action. So that is something that I know several groups are working on trying to make sure that people are as prepared as possible. If people would like to be connected or have people that they would like to connect to that, you can contact us on social media or email us at Columbus Freedom Coalition at Gmail, and I can try to help with that. But I think the most important thing would be for people to get plugged into groups right now, because without structure, the movement is going to kind of dissipate and nobody wants that.
All right. Other questions for Mia? Well, let's bring Pranav, Jani in, and
We can have
maybe
a
there'll be some
conversation.
joint conversations between the two of you as well, and further dialogue. But we really appreciate you coming forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, stick around. We're just going to have a further discussion. So Pranav, can you talk now?
Yeah.
No.
Hey,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Yeah. Can people hear me?
Yeah, let's just give you a little introduction in case people don't know you.
Oh, okay, great.
Pranav has been very active for a long period of time, and particularly, writes about the police and their conduct. But again, a professor of post-colonial and ethnic studies at The Ohio State, but a man, and more importantly, who believes in praxis. It's not just theory with Pranav. It's action, and very direct action. In fact, I saw you, were you leading or marching with some Worthington students just the other day? But good to see you out there, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction and invitation. I just want to say also that people who don't know Mia, you should know Mia. It's an honor to speak with you, to see you again, comrade. Mia is one of the people who, I just want to say this because people should know. Mia is one of the people who, stood up at the MLK breakfast, right? The 2,000 strong MLK breakfast, and was arrested with the police. And this is a person who, and mistakes happen, so don't anyone take it personally, but I just want you to know who Mia is and who Columbus Freedom Coalition is, because these are people, if you want to know, you see around the country, youth are leading the way. Columbus Freedom Coalition, Be Quick, there's other groups, so I'm not trying to leave people out, but these are them, right? These are the youth who are leading the way. Very principled, absolutely not working with police, not working with the powers that be, grassroots, the connections that they built with the family of Julius Tate Jr. And I'm telling you, as someone who's seen a lot of groups emerge, there's a sense of like, we need to actually be connected to that family, and not just in the sense of the family of someone who was shot so we can build a political movement. But this is a family in pain. What else can we do? So it's a sustained engagement with the family that's ongoing now a year more after the shooting. And often we don't see that, right? Because we come together around the shooting, around the death, around the violence, but not around the support for the life of the person and their family and their loved ones. And that's the kind of work they're doing. We're seeing it in the prison, the Prisoners Project, and those connections that are happening. Those who are imprisoned, you know, there's different languages people use, but you know, around defending the incarcerated. And I just want to underline some of those things. So yeah, it's definitely true. So yeah, what I wrote to Bob just before is like, I didn't prepare any particular thing. What do you want me to say? I think what I'll do is maybe say a few things about, you know, again, thanks for the invite. I'll say a few thoughts about what I'm seeing right now. I'm in a weird position after building the ISO branch here in Columbus for 15 years, and now it doesn't exist. And so I'm in a very weird and new position. After writing that Free Press article, I think a year ago, you know, painting the town red, ISO, DSA, socialist alternative, what's with all these socialist groups? And that popped up on my Facebook the other day. I was like, wow, well, it's good to be really energetic about things when they're going, but it's also good to be humble when we face the difficulties that this system throws at us and a longstanding project falls apart, right? That's not the first time it's happened. It's not the last time it's going to happen. But the conditions that make us fight, those still exist. And so those of us who are going to fight, we keep fighting. And so I'm speaking kind of as somebody not in any organization right now, but in close contact with comrades in different organizations. I think I'll just say that the spirit behind this movement that we're seeing, Amna Akbar, a OSU law professor, wrote in the New York Times today, somebody again who's connected to the movements as well as an academic. And she wrote about the need to recognize this as left-wing movements. Barbara Ransby wrote a few days ago, I believe, about the need for the left to see these movements as the working class in action. And not just to say, well, where are the unions, or the kind of usual markers that people have about working class and left activity that often doesn't think about a Black uprising in those terms. And so a challenge to the rest of the left to actually recognize what's happening here. So I really think like these slogans, can you imagine defund the police and abolish the police, have become mainstream topics of discussion in this country? I'm stunned. And there's people here who have been active for longer than I have. I'm stunned. Now, of course, there's people trying to twist it in different ways. They're trying to say, we're for defund the police. And so, you know, here's body cameras, right? There's people who are saying, we're against systematic racism. So like the OSU administration said the other day, we're against systematic racism. So we're not gonna let Columbus police be the first security team of choice when the special events situation needs to be monitored, you know, and so we'll bring in private cops. And we're like, right? But they say we understand systemic racism. And so, yes, there is a way in which certain kinds of language has become popular, defund the police, systemic racism, but people are still, the powers that be still want to do the same old reformist stuff. So that is there.
Niggers. I don't like 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 niggers.
I think it's
I don't
Ryan.
like niggers. I don't like niggers. I don't like niggers.
Everyone can mute themselves and we'll be able to figure out who it is. It's Ryan B. Thank you. So this is the third or fourth time I've been photobombed when I'm speaking, so I hope it's not me, and if it is, I apologize. But I guess what I want to say is following, what Amna wrote, what Barbara Ransby wrote, what other people wrote, and I'll just end with this, with 2 points. One is that what's happening right now is happening at a very deep level. Direct actions in Worthington, come on. When's the last time Worthington folks have blocked the streets, right? And it's just fascinating to see. And I went to a few things, but I'm holding back. I'm kind of like, they need to figure things out in their own way, right? So there's stuff that's happening, and it's very deep. And I think that even though the powers that be want to co-opt some radical slogans and do the same old, I think the genie's out of the bottle, and I think people are going to actually pursue this question and are pursuing this question. Columbus Police is not going to be in Columbus City Schools, at least for now. We don't know it's permanent, but that's a big victory. That's a pretty big victory. Can you even imagine that, right? And so these are the kind of times we're living in, number one. Number two, I just want to put out there that the excitement of spontaneity, the excitement of many organizations blooming, and diversity of tactics, and the kind of democracy that's part of that kind of decentralization is exciting. On the other side, it's that if there's diversity of tactics, but we don't have a sense, and there's not a knock on anyone. This is about how these mass movements always develop. If there isn't a place where people can sit together and argue and debate and coordinate those diversity of tactics, you might get some tactics that go in opposition to other tactics, right? You might get lack of clarity on what are the demands, right? So Be Quick's put out a great set of demands. There's people acting that don't really fit with those demands. So do they agree with them? What do they not agree with? Some of those discussions, for example, I think the more that they happen, the stronger we'll be. And so, again, this is not a critique. This is about the questions come up because the obstacles, like movements, why do movements stop? Movements stop because they face obstacles, political or material or otherwise, that they're not able to overcome, So what are ways to think about those things? There's some fantastic committed fighters for justice for a long time who are working closely with the mayor, right? Now first of all, I'm not Black, but second of all, I'm not gonna sit there and say, this is reformist bullshit and you need to do. I trust people to use their judgment and say, I think I'm gonna do this because it's a way out. Fine. How can we bring some of these dialogues together so we keep to the grassroots struggle that got here in the first place? I think those are some of the questions on my mind. So I'll just end with that.
Yeah, let me, I wanted to have Mia as well as you respond, open up a dialogue. There used to be a notion that if you're taking new people out, then in some ways you've got to be able to protect them or allow them in some ways to set up a structure where they can flourish. It seems to me that at this point there's vicious, massive, relentless brutality by the Columbus police. I mean, the orders of the day seem to have shifted. I mean, they're really hurting people. Is there anything either of you would recommend? I think Mia was hinting about it, hooking up with affinity groups. Any thought on that? Because this is I've been watching them a long time and I've been beaten by them, arrested by them, and I've really never seen them this vicious. Mia, are you still with us? And then we'll have Pranav.
Well, I would say, I'm not sure if this information, this is probably stuff that everyone in this group probably knows, but making sure to keep sharing articles that explain about masking up and about protecting your data and turning off location services when you go to protest. I mean, we know that Zoom is not a secure platform, so this probably isn't the best place to share maybe all of the tips, but I did write a piece for Gen Mag through Medium that is linked, I think, on CFC, that does have some links out to things you can do to protect your identity. And my biggest fear outside of the immediate brutality that happens at protests is the things they're doing days later, when they are tracking people down by their tattoos and by like a very specific book bag that they have. And that's also why it's so important that we don't take pictures and we do not go live at protests except to focus only on the police or on the feet of protesters. So I think just being aware that this movement is happening kind of in kind of a new digital age where they have many more tools now that they can hurt us, and they can come at you a couple days later, a couple weeks later with a felony charge.
And they do appear to be targeting correct. I mean, that's what, and that they're keeping people's phones. So you're absolutely right. Very important. You know, I'm busy suing just to get phones back when they shouldn't have them because they had no warrant. So thank you for that. Pranav, thoughts on this?
Yeah. Again, it's not a secure kind of thing, but I think one of the things I would say is, besides being aware of those things, which I'm still learning, you know, honestly, the digital safety stuff. Besides that, I would just say that we know that when the numbers are bigger, and there are exceptions, as we saw that first Saturday when they pepper sprayed, you know, even city council members. So there's what I was gonna say was, when there are numbers, there's strength in numbers, there's strength in witnesses. And it seems to me like when the protesters are fewer in number, they can really do the most kind of brutality. And I think that's true, even though we've seen instances of direct attacks, even when there's lots of people out. And so I think one of the things that happens is things peter out, and then sort of the usual suspects, especially Black and brown people, are kind of still there protesting, especially young people. And especially with COVID, you know, there's a lot of ways in which that is affecting all of this too. Anything we can do to get the numbers out, you know. And again, this is something that has been one of the difficulties this time around. I'll tell you, as a person who is in some networks but not in others, sometimes it's hard to know what's going on and what to prioritize. And so if we, as Columbus, again, looking forward, not just looking back, if we can find ways to centralize some information and to kind of make it clear so that a lot of people can come out to particular things and give the safety of bodies and numbers, I think that'll be another very practical way to take on the brutality.
All right. Any other questions for Mia or Pranav, or any other discussion or thoughts?
I tell you, my thoughts are is that we've watched them go from like randomly spraying of people in the face and throwing them down on the ground to running, you know, cars into people, and they have flash grenades, and they, you know, the media picks up only on the fact that protesters are rioting and looting. I mean, there really is a terrible narrative out there in the media that is obviously a fear-mongering against people who are protesting, to the point where in the little small towns, like, I don't know if you heard about the Bethel, Ohio incident, they were terrified of the protesters, but not the men that showed up in the motorcycle gangs with the guns. So, I mean, there's just a lot of interesting things going on out there. And, you know, even though the Free Press is a little small media outlet, we have radio stations, we don't no longer put out the paper with the virus out there, but we're, you know, trying to put as much as we can online and on social media to try to, I mean, I don't know how there is a way to eliminate the fact that protesters are people. Protesters are not some scary breed of a human that goes out there with some kind of vicious ideas in mind. They're just everyday people that are just your neighbors, your friends, you, your mom, your grandma. And I just think it's really unfortunate that the narrative got put out there that protesters were the problem versus the police. And this is for mainstream people, you know, not for the people in this group. I know nobody in this group believes that. But I just think the persistence of the protesters is just amazing and impressive and unprecedented, that through all of this oppression and brutality, they persist. It's fascinating and it's wonderful. So I agree that people should get involved with groups and they should continue and try to get out there more and more. It's not really a question.
Okay. I'd like to say something. Is it my turn?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm concerned that there's a media blackout of the protests. In the dispatch, it's just like the protests are no longer happening. For instance, the day after the awesome news shields that called out individual police officers by name and who they had killed and raped, and I looked at the dispatch the next morning and there was nothing there. It didn't happen. As far as the public's concerned, it's over. And like when I went to the Forward on Climate March in New York City about 5 years ago, there were 400,000, and it wasn't in any of the mainstream media. It wasn't on any of the morning talk shows. I thought like the city, Good Morning America would say like, oh, look at these cute costumes that people wore, and then it'd be like, you know, 5 seconds coverage. No, there was no coverage. It's like it didn't even happen. And the only media that covered it was the Huntington Post, and their coverage was, there's a media blackout on the public outcry about climate change. And it's the same thing about this police brutality and the protests in Columbus, Ohio. The dispatch is not reporting it. And then there was a city council meeting this Monday in which the city council went ahead and reinstated the militarization of the police and the funding of a new helicopter with mapping, and 3 council members voted against this, including Elizabeth Brown, but it was buried on like the Metro section in a news story that didn't say anything about police. It was about tax abatements, and it was in a little paragraph near the end of the article. So you're talking about these protests. I'm concerned that because, you know, the public doesn't even know they're going on.
Don't we need to take back our media somehow? It's a major issue.
Yeah, well, I think that, and I think Mia alluded to social media going in different directions and being able to communicate in secure ways. I mean, the police in Columbus and nationally have been using these fake cell towers forever and illegally, hacking all our phones. It's been well known. And the fact on Monday, I mean, real important that background checks for cops, you know, for years we've been, you know, chanting the cops and the Klan go hand in hand and, you know, blue by day, white by night. But there's a report, a heavily redacted report that's been around for years that shows there was a massive infiltration of the police force by white supremacists. And there's going to be a discussion on Monday at City Council. I intend to submit probably in writing. I'm working on co-writing a manuscript on white supremacy in Ohio. And if you go back, you know, I mean, it's deeply embedded in the DNA of Ohio. And so you're right, we got to get this information out there.
Mia wants to talk.
Go ahead, Mia.
I just wanted to share regarding social media, that's part of why it's so important that when you see a post from any of the groups that you support and whose information you want to get out there, that you like or heart it. If you sad react or angry react, even if the news is sad or angry, the news feed will bury it. So if you're on Instagram, even if you have like 5 followers, sharing that to your story tells the algorithm that that is something that people need to see. And so like with the 12 to abolish 12 demands that I co-authored with Be Quick, having that have the furthest reach possible, even if you think that maybe your followers or friends on Facebook wouldn't necessarily be interested, it helps tell the algorithm that people need to see it. So even if the news is ignoring us, we still have power through social media. We just have to make sure that we're constantly uplifting this so we don't get buried.
That is interesting. Did not know that.
Yeah, I just agree. I think social media is a great tool. So, you know, using the hashtags, forwarding. So what I do after probably every day or every couple days, I'll be like, what did you know, Columbus Freedom Coalition post? Let me send it around, right? What did Be Quick post? Let me send it around. What did PJP post? Like, I'm kind of like, I'm gonna lift all those groups, and there are debates, there are discussions, but all of these groups are trying to fight, you know, so how do we put those out there? So I think that kind of thing is really important. Sharing them through, if you have a page, right? Suppose you're the administrator of a page or a group, sharing it in there kind of gives it also more coverage. And then if you're on Twitter, you can tag the mainstream media groups directly. You know, if you've been interviewed by a reporter, you probably can find their Twitter tag and then just tag them on there. And people do look, you know, people, when they get notifications, they look. They might not write an article about it, but these are small ways to every day help that movement. But I also think that even though there's a media blockout, if you think about, again, the kinds of things that are being discussed right now, the kinds of things being published in the mainstream newspapers, I'll just, you know, it's still significant. I'll say something else, which is, I used to think before that, you know, there's protests, there's organizing, there's demonstrations, but all those little conversations with your conservative family member or this or that, they're not as important. You know, I used to kind of, today, everyone's like, go do it there too, because we just need to get a deep level kind of change, right? So for my own safety, you know, whatever I do, I don't put big signs outside my house. This and that, this and that. Fine, I'm doing my thing. You don't need to know what I think where I live. As I was passing by the other day through my neighborhood and I heard some kind of racist remarks and this and that, or reference to, you know, oh, the rioters downtown. I'm going to go grab a sandwich downtown and check out the rioters and stuff like that. I was like, that day, I'm putting up my Black Lives Matter sign right outside and let people know who's here and let's have the conversations. And so I think, like, at every level, at the small levels, social media, interpersonal, pushing things forward, I think that's the spirit right now in every forum. Just push, push, push.
And frankly, I don't think that that many people read the Dispatch anymore. Social media hits a lot more people than Columbus Dispatch.
There was an incident downtown where a bunch of people were on the sidewalk. A couple weeks ago, John Lasker was there. And I was watching the video, and it was like the cops show up, they're just pissing around talking to people, and guys about moving cars or whatever. And next thing you know, well, first some black guy got arrested. He was on the sidewalk. The cop didn't like him. It just seemed like the cop just reached out and grabbed him, and that was it. Next thing you know, behind him, some biker decides he's going to leave the incident area, and they grab him. And it's like they just didn't like the crowd. They got sent down there on a mission to get rid of people on the sidewalk protesting. And that was the end of the story. And as soon as their backup came, you see one guy talking on his microphone, boom, all these cars come up and they're like, no problem, we can deal with you now. We got enough people here. They got the freaking tear gas and pepper spray guns out and everything else. And I don't know if anybody knows anything more about what happened that night, who got arrested, or what joke they were using to arrest these people for.
What night was that? What night was that, Steve?
Man, it was like 2 weeks. John Lasker I was talking to him about it, and we were trying to gather information. I think that was I don't know, but it just seemed like they're on the sidewalk protesting, and all of a sudden the cops are going to come along. I think the night before they blocked the intersection, so maybe the cops were upset about that. But you know, just the way they acted, it was just totally out of control.
I think you're describing what happened pretty much every night, so it would be hard to tell which
for
night
me-
it was.
For me, I've been down there since Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day. I've been down and I've experienced late night activities. The police respond differently. So Saturday, the one that Pranav mentioned, the Saturday morning when all the elected peoples were, we organized that. And so it was sort of exciting to see that broke media silence in a way. But yeah, the demonstrations are going to do what they do. I mean, police are going to do what they do, and I don't know. I'm challenged in seeing that, you know, arresting is bad, yes, but you're down there, you're going to get arrested, and maybe that's a statement in and of itself. How they get treated, you know, the police have not been good. I agree, they have not been good, but they're never good. They are the guardians of the capitalists. Period. And that's what they are. So.
Mia.
Oh wait, we're gonna lose Pranav here in a minute because he's got to go. I don't know if we want to give Pranav the last word here.
Oh, Mia had her hand up.
Oh,
so go ahead.
Mia. Well,
Yeah.
sorry.
I can wait if Mia, if you want to go, that's
Go ahead, Mia.
I would just say quickly that, yeah, well, we can't control really what the cops are going to do, and they respond violently, and it seems at times arbitrarily. I would encourage looking at a lot of the faces here, if you're white, to put your body in between the police and Black protesters, because thinking about the optics of what it looks like if they arrest you versus if they arrest me, and there's a picture of that, is very important. And they're less likely to be violent to you. They're less likely to charge you with a trumped up charge. So I would encourage everyone who's white here and who feels that they could put their body between the police and a Black protester to do so. And I think that's something we can do regardless of how the police are going to react.
Okay. Pranav, anything to say before you have to leave?
Yeah, I want to say something to what Mark said, and then maybe that's it, or maybe a general comment. I don't know, but like, you know, and thanks for. I got to run to another thing, but thanks for again inviting me and for being part of this and for.
Thank you for speaking.
And I guess on the police thing, and Mark, maybe you'll understand what I mean. I'm used to in the past groups saying, I'm going to do civil disobedience and I'm going to get arrested. That's my plan. And that's why I'm out here. And I'm going to train myself to be able to get arrested. Right? Or I'm not. And when the police give the warning, because I've decided for whatever reason, like at the airport protest or on the Muslim ban, we had kids there, we had strollers, we had like little babies. And I was part of the leadership. We didn't want to get them hurt. We had people who would come out to their first protests. We had immigrant communities. And we're like, I want them to come out to the next protest. So we made a decision, we're not going to get arrested. If the police, we're going to push them. But if the police say you need to do this or you're going to get arrested, we're going to pull back. You see what I mean? So to the extent that you can plan, you can always plan. I'm used to people saying we are going to get arrested or we're going to try not to. What's happening now? So in that case, when the police, if you've decided you're going to get arrested, then when the police come and arrest you, you don't say, hey, why are you arresting me? It was the point of what you've been trying to provoke. You see what I mean? Well, what I'm seeing right now, and I'm trying to get my head around it, is people saying, I'm going to take the next step. I'm going to taking the street is not a big issue anymore. People don't go, oh, should we take the street? I remember at an Occupy meeting in 2011, we're like, how do we work through why people are afraid to get off the sidewalk? And we work through the different discussions. Now people aren't afraid. They're like our street. Whose streets? Our streets means take the street. That's normal. But there isn't this kind of like, am I planning to get arrested? Am I not? It's kind of like, and so when they come to arrest you, it's like, why are you coming to arrest me? Why are you being this way? Why? And there's a certain kind of anger towards that action of the police, which I've had to learn to get my head around. Like, people both want the right to do what they want, and they want the right to say, how dare you come and attack me like this? And I think there's something really powerful in that, you know? And so, so that's how I kind of see it. I'm taking an action that's illegal, right? You're not supposed to just walk on the street. And at the same time, how dare you come and arrest me because I did something illegal, because what I'm doing is for justice. And I think there's something there that's very, very powerful.
Isn't it though? I mean, there used to be a ritual. They had to warn you. What I'm seeing on tons and tons of tape is that there's no longer a warning. And not only is there not a warning, they got a list. I saw this during the World Bank and some of those things where I mean, they're rolling up and grabbing certain people. And any black male, you know, who's young and runs, I mean, he doesn't have to do anything wrong. He's going to be arrested. Is that that seems to be a new tactic, ain't it? I mean, the ritual's not there anymore. Like, what you're doing is illegal. Step away. You know, they give you the 1, 2, 3. I mean, now you don't even get a half.
The protesters aren't waiting for the formal democratic vote to decide should we get arrested or not, and the police aren't waiting for the warning to say we are going to arrest you. The protesters are more bold, and the police are more aggressive. You know, and I think that's what's going on. So I'll have to leave, but I hope. But thanks again for having me.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time, Pranav.
Thank you. More from you, Mia?
With civil disobedience, you know, there's no successful social movement has ever happened without civil disobedience. And it shows that we do have, in some instances, a right to block groups to block the street. Technically, we don't, but in those kind of civil actions, we do. If we're, you know, and where are the police when these windows are being broken? They're not stopping that. You know, it's almost like the police seem to be encouraging that, so that a few people that come to these protests in order to just be destructive or else to try to make the movement look bad, that's a problem. And I really do think there needs, well, how do you dialogue with these people? But it's like, we need a public space. We have the right as groups of people to show our dissatisfaction with, you don't have the consent of the governed here. And we are in the street now as a group to show that the normal avenues for making change have been closed to us. And this is why we're here. And I'm not saying I have any answers, but we need to ask, why aren't the police protecting the property? Why aren't they lining this side of the streets and just watching and helping the people go where they want to go? And that would solve so many problems. And the police seem to have they're not even under the control of the people that are unleashing them on us. They're just, maybe Bob, we can address that as to, yeah, who has any control over them and how much, and give us some insight on that.
Well, I would just say they're not following the orders of the day. And I'll let Mia get a last word in here, but like a group of attorneys and more upper middle class people encouraged where the macing took place. You had Kevin Boyce down there, right? You had Shannon Hardin, president of the council. You had, again, Joyce Haiti, and they were maced. I mean, which is a positive from my perspective, because we've been complaining about this for years and they never said anything. But Mia, any last thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I would say that one thing to kind of keep in mind, kind of in line with what you were getting at, is that, I mean, there are pictures of police breaking the windows of their own cars. That's why there are thoughts that there's these very neat piles of bricks outside of windows and that they want property destruction. And when you look at the statement from the Fraternal Order of Police, where they flat out say that they're going to ignore Mayor Ginther's useless statement, they've gone completely rogue. They continue to use pepper spray and to escalate situations and create situations where they can claim that it's even sort of necessary. So I think that that's actually in some ways a good sign, because the city is breaking down, and this is how we're going to get to abolition. I would also just plug one more time the demands that I Am Be Quick wrote, because one of them is the right to protest and not to be deemed violent, because that is one of the major loopholes in Mayor Ginther's kind of decree, is that pepper spray would not be used to disperse non-violent protests. And the word violent is so open that they can use it to do whatever they want to us. So I think, yeah, I guess most of what I would say is summed up in the 12 to abolish 12 demands. And thank you for having me.
Right, thank you for coming.
Could you send us a link to that 12, those demands?
Yep, I will put that in the chat right now.
Great, thank you so much. And I think what we all got to keep in mind is police brutality is just one symptom, and the larger cause is just racism. And that's really the bottom line of what needs to be addressed. And obviously taking down Columbus statues is symbolic, but it doesn't change anything. So even though things are happening and they're kind of like lip service a little bit along the way, making it seem like the city is trying to do things right, or even in the world things are happening, all of that is positive, but the underlying issue is just racism in this country. So it seems like everything Columbus Freedom Coalition does, from helping people in prisons and people, you know, everything you do to try to free people, Julius Tate, we really appreciate everything you're doing. And the more you can keep us informed of that, the more we can spread it out to everybody that we know. So thank you.
Yeah, good chat. Because we know it was a deliberate incarceration rate. The whole war on drugs was absolutely bogus.
And that's what
and the CIA were the main people bringing the drugs in. So we need to fight them and tear down the system.
Great. So our next speaker is Paul Becker, and I'm going to, Paul, I'm going to make you the host.
Just before.
What is that?
Mark.
What about Mark?
What'd you say, Mark?
Just before you click off, over 2,000 sites in the minority communities, poor and people of colors communities, have been shut down. Coronavirus testing sites. This is a deliberate attempt to limit the results, limit the status that is out there. This is based on Wall Street Journal's reporting. Over 2,000 sites in the people's free and low-cost testing sites. So when you hear these white motherfuckers talk, excuse my language, talk about testing is everywhere, it is not.
Wow, that's real scary stuff. Thank you. So just to get, so we can move along, Kathy Cowan-Becker, or should I give you the hosting capability? Because I don't see Paul here anymore.
Yeah, he's right next to me.
Okay.
Our camera just, it doesn't, we have to be boosted really high. We're barely making it onto the camera. But I can share the screen and then.
I think I have to make you
the
the
host disabled. Oh, you do have to make us host.
Okay,
It says that this is
there you go.
Okay, let's try that
Are
again.
now the host.
Great. So I'm gonna do.
So Kathy and Paul are now official Free Press correspondents and reporters, and so we're going to see some evidence of what Paul's been doing over these past few months.
Yeah, I'm also a sociologist at the University of Maine, and
video and audio. photographing protests. So it's Occupy. In the last 3 years, I photographed over 150 protests. And I've also been paying a lot of attention, especially the past 6 weeks, on the ethics. And I've been doing a lot of podcasts and webinars, listening to what non-white photojournalists are saying about how you should photograph. I just did one yesterday that included the photo editor from the New York Times, who's African American. And I've been kind of using their guidelines on, you know, what are the ethics of shooting protest photography, especially the recent events that are happening. So I'm going to show you some of the photos I've taken at 3 of the protests that have happened downtown. This is just outside of police headquarters when they were being a little more active. I think they've recently have reopened Marconi Avenue, but they had it closed for a while. And this is just how they were ready to move out against protesters when needed. So May 30th was the first Saturday, and oftentimes the bikes are bought in to control the crowds. They use them as weapons to shove people back. And most of the times when I've seen conflicts, it's oftentimes started with the bikes. And they bring in, again, the support individuals in the riot gear. So when I'm photographing, you know, I try to get the police, trying to show what's happening, the bigger picture. And then occasionally I also will try to do the individual, so you can see how the officers are weaponized, how they're armed. This again was all around that time. And again, I like to, when possible, have a sign with the police officers, kind of the interaction.
Sorry.
And another one with police protester interactions. And this is after the protesters had taken over, or tried to take over Broad and High, and the police had retaken that. Basically, there were too many people that day. I think the estimates I saw were 1,500 to 2,000. So they were marching peacefully around the circle, and this is when Shannon and Joyce Beatty were maced around this time. And then, again, kind of the standoff between the police and protesters. But that was that first weekend. And then they brought in the mounted police as well. So they had riot gear, bikes, horses, pretty much had everyone there that day. On June 21st, I photographed a march in the morning, and I was driving home, and I decided to drive by the State House, and this is what I saw. And I knew if CPD was coming out in force like this, that it was not going to end well. So I ended up parking the car and heading to the State House. And once again, there were a couple of protesters in the road. It was pretty calm though. But eventually the police decided they wanted to have zero tolerance. So they decided no one was going to be allowed into the road. So once again, they brought in the bikes and used them to force people off the street and to maintain a line. And actually, go back one for a minute. Sorry about that. This is again a time where I made a decision. I saw a man walking towards the line of police with a scooter, and it looked like he was going to throw it. And at that point, I put my camera down. This is again one of those decisions I decided to make where I didn't want my photo to be used as evidence of a felony. And in fact, he did throw the scooter at police, and they chased him down, and he was arrested and charged with a felony. So once that happened, the crowd moved back to Broad and High. They were aligned in front of the State House, but after that, the police deploy pepper spray, so the crowd moved. These were some of the signs. They look like shields. I oftentimes call them shields, but I've been told they prefer that they are called signs. This is the back of them where they're reflecting so the police can see themselves. So they're moving in. And again, the protesters have the intersection on all four sides kind of blocked off. And the bikes are now going to move forward and trying to retake the intersection. And this is a video of what it looked like.
Thrusting.
Yeah, and then they, again, deploying pepper spray. That's what you see happening there. And still moving the crowd more, clearing the intersection, arresting people who fall down, who are taken down. And you can see he has a can of pepper spray. Keep going.
I think that's a medic.
And that's kind of the aftermath, once again, the shield. And now the police have taken over the intersection.
I don't know how to.
I kind of, the irony of this sign, stop the assault on us. Was interesting. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the police had taken the intersection, the bikes went ahead and controlled. And then they brought in, once again, reinforcements. And then once they had control of the intersections, I don't have the last photo, the protesters left.
Oh my God,
Basically, they said that we had the intersection, you took it over, now you're the ones blocking the traffic. And they went on a march and left the police there to hold the intersection with no protesters around.
Yeah, that was the day the people with the signs said, okay, they just turned around and started marching a different direction.
And the police destroyed a number of those signs that day. So on the last set, which was June 27th, was a Recall Ginther rally, is when they introduced the new signs that somebody mentioned before, where they have the officer's name and what they were accused of. They were on the east side of City Hall, so I was able to go up in Levesque and get pictures. And that's where I took most of the photos. So it was a little bit above ground level. This was toward the top. Most of them were taken from the second floor. But this was the place where they came in, this peaceful rally, and they had bagged all the meters around City Hall the night before. And the rally was on a Sunday. And some cars were parked there, mainly unloading water and other supplies, but the police came in and decided they were going to tow all the vehicles. So all this was because of vehicles that were basically illegally parked.
Assholes.
And then some of the protesters had bikes and they were trying to use them the same way the police do, as a shield. So eventually they, you can see a little bit more of those signs, what they look like. And then once again, the bikes come in to take control and used to shove people back. Clear them off the street. And then what they're chanting here is, look at what you're doing. And those are all for cars that were parked at meters with bags on them on a Sunday in downtown Columbus. And those were some pics from 3 of the more significant daytime police protester conflicts.
Yeah, so that's it. So Paul's pictures are available on Flickr or often on his social media pages. The chat, we're not able to see the chat right now, so if there are any questions there, we don't see them. I'll try to send the host back to, we'll stop the share and send the host back to Suzanne.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Great shots. We appreciate your work so much. Thank you.
Yeah, in the analysis of their tactics. So
we're looking for the people that are going to speak. If there's any questions, please.
Any questions for Paul? Any thoughts or questions?
Showed up as well.
Paul, this is Mark. Paul and Kathy, I've appreciated I've seen you out there. I know you're out there doing what you need to do and taking documentation. It's great. Keep it up. Thank you.
We can move on then to our next subject, and I'm going to let Bob go ahead and introduce the next.
It's the next subject, which is a long-standing subject at the Free Press, the question of hemp and marijuana in the Buckeye State. And Marijuana Borden will be speaking. I mean, Mary Jane Borden, the best name for the pot beat ever. And my good friend, and we go back a long, long way back into the 90s when many of these issues were first raised. But the Free Press itself has been pro-legalization since the beginning. Mary Jane, take it away.
Mary Jane, you are muted right now, though.
Mary Jane.
Do we have Mary Jane here? She's on the list. She is muted.
There you go. I got it. I got it. I had my own computer unmuted, but I didn't have it unmuted for Zoom. So I think I've got it now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Bob and Suzanne, for inviting us to speak today. That would be me and Victoria and Angelica and possibly Peggy Sue Kimmel, if she's here. If not, we have Amy Wolfenbarger who could tell her story for her. I think that we decided that we'll let that story go first. And so I'd like to therefore introduce my good friends, Victoria Kahn. I know she's here. And then subsequently, Amy Wolfenbarger. Do you have to do anything in particular to unmute them, Suzanne?
I just unmuted myself.
Yeah, there's Vic.
I think I'm here.
Amy. There's Amy. I see Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
I do not. Do you know was Peggy Sue going to try to be on?
I think Peggy Sue wanted Glenn to try to be on. She is really, really struggling with everything that they've been going through, and she's not handling it well. So, yeah, I think she was hoping that Glenn would be on, but I don't see him in here.
Okay, yeah, I didn't either. Glenn Keeling. Well, I've been sort of following or trying to follow Peggy Sue and Glenn's case. Gosh, I don't know exactly. It seems like it's been 3 years to me. Amy, has it been 3 years? And they were originally arrested for cannabis and some other charges. I don't really know a whole lot of the details because the thing has drug on so long. I'm not sure what's what anymore, which of course is why I wanted to make sure I invited Amy. And Carrie Cannon was another girl that was going to speak about it tonight, but evidently she has gotten into some kind of a car accident, which I just learned about within the last half hour or so from Amy. And I guess she's not able to join either. So that I was kind of gonna give it over to them. But with that, Amy, unless, you know, I can't really tell who's all here. Well, I can if I look, but I only see Amy, and so I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and she's been actually attending some of their court hearings and things of that nature, and she would have a much better handle on the up-to-date status of their case.
Okay. Yeah, it has. It's been almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in October that they've been fighting this injustice. Their home was raided on Halloween 2017. Initially, their charges were dismissed. And then for whatever reason, the prosecution decided to pick it back up again. So each couple was, I mean, they just stacked all the charges. It was just ridiculous. They each had about 30 charges, and they were each facing just over 50 years prison time. So, you know, of course, they've been trying very hard to fight this over the years. Mercer County Courthouse, the system there, they've basically taken everything that they have. They've taken their money, you know, they've taken more of their health. Yeah, it's just gotten really bad. After fighting for 3 years, they were basically coerced into signing a plea agreement. They were threatening to take their home. So each of them pled to 3 felony charges apiece. Peggy was, the understanding, the deal was that it, you know, the whole thing is just so crazy. So they tried them separately, but together. So like they're both there in the courtroom at the same time with the attorneys sitting at the table. But they each had to have their own attorneys. So even though they were together, they were being tried separately. And each time they came at them with a plea agreement, excuse me, they would tell, you know, Glenn and Peggy, well, you know, you can't accept your deal unless Glenn accepts his deal as well. And they had been offering Peggy probation. So the last deal was the best one they had been given, and Peggy was supposed to plead to felony child endangerment and receive probation. And that Glenn was going to plead to, you know, the 3 different felony charges, which include possession of hashish, felony distribution, and felony manufacturing. And then as we sat there, the judge proceeded to read Peggy's maximum sentences at her charges, and they were actually charging her with 3 as well. 1 felony child endangerment, 1 felony possession of hashish, and then a felony possession of THC, which to me just doesn't make any sense at all. And her maximum sentence could be up to 84 months in prison. And Glenn's could be up to about 90 months in prison. So I mean, that's kind of where we are today. Their sentencing is on July 27th. What we're understanding is the best thing that the public could do right now to assist them is to write a letter addressed to the Honorable Judge Ingraham, Ingraham, and just, you know, ask that he show mercy, have leniency, and we're requesting that he sentence each to probation only. There are no minimum mandatories, so he certainly has the discretion to do that. My understanding is that that can be quite effective if they get enough letters to the judge, you know, the belief is that the potential for probation, you know, is pretty high. The Mercer County prosecutor, though, has been known to say that he does definitely want to see Glenn do some kind of prison time. They are both, and were at the time, legal patients in the state. They got their card before the program was really up and running. And, you know, we're bringing product back or having product delivered to them from a neighboring legal state. So, I mean, they were within, you know, Ohio law in the possession, you know, with the 90 days that you're allowed to possess at one time in Ohio. Both of them were within Ohio law. The manufacturing charge apparently comes in because they had a torch. And, you know, the statement from law enforcement was that they were using the torch to melt down Jolly Ranchers to make edibles. However, there were no Jolly Ranchers found in the home. So, yeah, it's just been, you know, crazy. And like I said, they've taken everything. You know, Glenn had hired an attorney, but then he ran out of money. So they're both working with a public defender. Part of the plea agreement, too, was that they would keep, you know, the money that was in the home. And then, like I said, they were threatening them with taking their house if they didn't take this plea deal. So as part of the plea deal, they'll get you keep the house. But they have also, part of the plea deal also was that, you know, they would waive their rights to any kind of an appeal. So that's where we are today. Sentencing is July the 27th. It's been really hard to get Ohioans, you know, to show support at the courthouse. I guess to a degree I understand, because you don't really feel like you're doing much. I mean, I just wish there was more I could do other than just show up and write a letter. But unfortunately, that's all I can do. And it does seem to have, you know, a little bit of effect, the public support. The biggest thing I've noticed is the public support really kind of helps them feel better. You know, it helps with their mental state. It really helps them to feel, you know, like they have the support of the public. So we're trying to get, you know, more support for them and more letters to the judge in hopes that, you know, we could get them both just sentenced with probation. Along with that, Glenn will lose his driver's license for 15 years. Fines in about the amount of $35,000, and then Peggy would lose her driver's license, possibly 10 years, fined somewhere around, I think, 15,000. So now you're gonna have, you know, two people with medical issues who won't be allowed to drive, and you have to work, and you got to pay these fines, you know. So I really don't know, you know, what they expect these folks to do. You know, I don't believe anybody should be jailed for cannabis, but, you know, right now with the COVID stuff going on, I think, you know, it might have changed, but at one point I had read that Ohio prisons had the highest death rate in the country for coronavirus. And, you know, I mean, Peggy is a multiple sclerosis. She's wheelchair bound. And Glenn is COPD and also has a diagnosis of Crohn's disease. So, I mean, these sentences for them could potentially be, you know, a life sentence. So, yeah, that's just kind of where we're at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Amy, one thing that strikes me, just a second, I just wanted to say this. Could you talk a little bit about the corruption of the prosecutor? I read the little blurb you put out there. It looks like this guy's a real jerk.
Well, you know what? I was going to message you because when I started digging into the prosecutor, the first thing I noticed were 3 lawsuits against this guy, Matt Fox, for basically shutting people's rights to free speech down. And he has literally prosecuted people that have spoken out against him on the internet using Ohio's stalking and menacing law and Ohio's telecommunications law. One of the gentlemen, they actually, he's got an actual website, countycorrupt.com, and he was bringing a lot of the corruption to light within the city. And I mean, they indicted him on like 30 stack charges, basically for freedom of speech on the internet, using that, the stalking and menacing law, as well as the telecommunications law. So yeah, people refer to Matt Fox and, this Judge Ingraham and Sheriff Gray. Basically, they refer to them as the Mercer County Mafia. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of rumors and all kinds of things about, them supporting certain drug dealers and not others. And the people that aren't included in their mafia would be the ones, that they typically prosecute. But yeah, I mean, on that corruptmercercounty.com, there it goes pretty much into depth about how his election came about. And things like that. And then that county, nobody will run against them. Nobody. They are really fearful, of the government up there and the things that have happened when, people try to speak out or try to run against them. Yeah, it's just some really, really shady dealings. I mean, Matt Fox got in because the old prosecutor, he pulled petitions at like the 11th hour, gathered signatures, and very, very quietly, put his name in to run. So he just kind of slid in and replaced the guy that was there before him, and nothing was ever challenged. So yeah, little small town, I can't help but believe that if they were in like Columbus or here in the Cincinnati area, that it would not be this serious. I mean, they have nothing going on up there. I have never pulled up to a courthouse in my life where there's like parking all around it, free. And then you enter the courthouse and there are no searches, there's no x-ray machines. I mean, you just walk right in and into the courtroom, and yeah, it's like nothing happens there, so it seems like they really kind of go after some of these charges on people that aren't part of their clique.
All right. Let's see, Mary Jane, were you gonna do any summary on the state of medical marijuana and where we are in Ohio? I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a PowerPoint. I put together a PowerPoint that went with my article for this particular month. I just asked Suzanne if she needed to cue me up.
Yeah, I got
other than that, I do have a few things that I could talk about as well.
Yeah, we're going to make you the host, so go ahead.
So you'll get a request to be the host, and you got to accept it, and then you'll be the host.
Okay.
Did you see a little menu item pop up saying you're the host?
Thank you, Amy.
I did not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, in the meantime, Amy, yes, that's a very compelling story and very sad, and we hate to hear these kind of things happening for people. And if we can get more information, we'll send it out to the whole group and ask people to help support them.
Yeah, that would definitely be great, because I know that that's not the reason that I've been fighting all these years, is not to keep locking people up, especially patients. So yeah, we would, Glenn and Peggy would really appreciate it as well. Like I said, they're just, they're going through so much. It's terrible.
All right.
Suzanne, I don't see anything that gives me admin or anything. I see.
Yeah, it was 7 to 9.
Well, go ahead and hit share screen and see if it'll let you, because you are the host now.
Okay.
I'm just only capable of taking in so much.
You see my screen? It's not saying that. Oh, there it is. Are you sharing my screen?
Started screen sharing. Yeah.
Everybody else kind of
Yeah, the screen's up.
Make sure everybody else is muted while she's going through this, unless you have a question.
When this started,
Okay, can everybody see it?
Yeah, but we hear a lot of talking in the background.
One or maybe two people who kind of
You need to mute. We're getting a bleed through. You need to mute.
because they were saying
Hello, somebody.
white lives matter, white lives matter, you know, that kind of thing. And so
try
they
muter
the names they didn't recognize. They deleted them.
Hello.
Hello, you gotta mute your mic. Hello. Hello, you need to mute your mic.
And what's interesting for me is hearing them say that, you know, the regular media.
You're the host.
Oh, we get the private conversation.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to take the hosting back.
Social media, but yeah, no, I get so skeptical of social media, and so I'm
I don't know if you can see to mute her.
Suzanne, you can mute everyone.
I don't seem to be able to do it when I'm not the host.
I take in as much information as
Oh, we need
Oh,
to
if you're the host.
talk.
I mean,
Okay, I got the.
do you want me to go off? Do you want me to stop my share?
No, I got it. I just muted her.
Okay, she's muted. Go ahead.
Wait, I gotta give it back. I gotta give her back, Mary Jane, back the hosting. I thought it was an alphabet. There it is. Okay, sorry about that. You're the host now.
Go ahead, Mary Jane.
Okay, the screen I have in front of me has like me and you and I think Victoria there. Do you see that thing on the right? I mean, it doesn't matter. I'll just go forward with it.
Yeah,
or do you see it clear screen?
Clear screen is the war on drugs races. Are their deeds shall know them?
All right. Now if you guys have hopefully read it, my topic for this month's Columbus Free Press article, I've been trying to write articles monthly under my moniker, which is Mary Jane's Guide. So my Mary Jane's Guide is to this week, because I think it was pertinent, is the drug war on drugs racist? Now I wanted to answer this question for myself. I mean, I thought, well, you know, all I have to do is really write one word and say yes. You know, my article's over with. I'm done. You can submit it. You know, 800 words. You know, I can accomplish with one word. But in the same respect, to me, I wanted to make it more than that. I wanted to see some way we could quantify this where people who are disbelievers would say, you know, the data's there. I know some people don't listen to data these days, but I think it's still important to kind of put together an argument that's convincing, that could be, hopefully, let's say, I was going to ask you earlier, say, could we get this presented to Bernie Sanders so it could go to Joe Biden while he's crafting his policy for the Democratic National Committee's party platform? Well, I think we missed that opportunity, but if we could get it out there anyway, I think it's an important message because it's very pertinent to the times. Is the drug war racist? Is the second. Is the question. Now, back when I grew up in a kind of religious household, there was a saying that says, by their deeds shall you know them. So I'm going to move on and say, okay, let's check this out. Like I said, this kind of follows along with my article. If you have read my article, it's of the same title as the drug war racist. So I wanted to first define what is the war on drugs. I mean, I know you guys don't need that level of, you know, definition, but just so you know, it's there. It's this zealotry. It's this tough on war mentality that's being applied to both users. You can see poor Peggy Sue and Glenn, and of course dealers as well. And so the question for me became, you know, how did this war begin? Well, throughout the 1800s and into the 1900s, there was this thing called the Progressive Era. Now, it was interesting to me is that I think every one of us who will probably by definition will say, yeah, I'm a progressive. Now, 100 years ago, the progressive movement did some wonderful things. You know, they were antitrust. There were some important developments there. You broke apart Standard Oil. They're pro-union, you know, some of the union laws and child labor laws, we came out of the progressive movement. But they also had this darker underbelly where they felt that they could utilize the government to employ, you know, empower social purity and reform type motivation, and to the social security kind of thing, they morphed into race. In other words, they were crafting laws and that kind of cast marijuana as Mexicans, opium, Chinese, cocaine, blacks. And so what they did was I took a look, because like I said, I was trying to quantify this. So I took a look at 30 different drug policy focused laws and amendments and the all important treaties. Treaties are very important to drug policy. There's not to be forgotten here. So I took a look at 30 of them. I probably didn't cover the full universe, but I was trying to cover everything from this progressive era, which basically encompassed the late 1800s, as I said, to the 1900s, all the way through. And I think the last bill that I looked at, or last law I looked at, was 2003, which was the RAVE Act. So under those 30, I could quantitatively show, I think, that almost 2/3 of them you could just say, yeah, that was racist. Now, one of the laws that were written prior to the 1950s, many of those which are still in force now, were decidedly racist. I mean, the tones that they used to pass these laws in the testimony and in the media, it's just abundantly clear that really 100% of those laws from about 1900 to 1950 were racist, period, okay? So I say, well, over half of the 30 were racist. And so this is how I said this. So I guess I wanted to go back here a little bit. I don't know if I go back, but let's just go right directly to this topic here, because Harry Anslinger, I know he's pretty famous among drug policy circles. If you haven't heard from him, this is the real bad boy of drug policy, Prohibition. He served, I think, almost maybe 30, 40 years in the government, various positions where he had authority over drugs. In fact, when Prohibition was repealed in the 1930s, you know, he's worried about, what am I going to do for a job? Well, he created for a job of his own by inventing reefer madness. And so from about 1934 to 1978, and even 1978 might be posthumously, but he influenced 9 bills, all the way up to the Controlled Substances Act of 1970, to the, there was a treaty that he influenced. And then we're talking about even a comprehensive drug control act of 1978, because all those things that he had put into the 1970 version, even though he was deceased by that time, were still smoldering and developing and becoming some of the things we despise today. For example, civil asset forfeiture. We were just talking about that with Peggy Sue and Glenn. You know, that's what they're facing now when they forfeit their house, forfeit their money. And this is the laws. This is where this stuff germinates from. And it germinates from a really, 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 really racist guy. Now, okay, those are the deeds. But like I say, now by their deeds shall you know them. Well, what about their words? Don't the words have something to say here? And also, what about the legacy? So let's check out the words for these people. First of all, we have Richard Nixon. I think this is Bob's favorite quote. I love it. I love it. I mean, this is just for John Ehrlichman, who was an aide to Richard Nixon in an interview. This was, I think, after Nixon's death. It was probably in about the mid-1990s. And he just fessed up. It was like with this interview, I think it was with Harper's, I think, something like that. He just fessed up and he said, and I think this is the all-important part of this quote. Did we know we were lying about drugs? Of course we did. Do you know why I think Biden's lying about drugs? Of course he knows he's lying. Trump knows he's lying. They all know they're lying. I think the drug war is one of the greatest perpetuated lies of all time. And so, yes, they know what they're doing. And they now will hopefully understand that the seeds that they plant, that they're perpetuating, are the seeds of racism. So let's take a look at some more of the quotes. And this is how we know. Now, this is going back a few years. I think one of my favorite quotes is, I think should be everybody's in this room, marijuana leads to pacifism and communist brainwashing. Yeah, you know, my brain is completely washed clean. I am a communist brain, socialist, you know, drug policy reform activist here. So he was right. But I don't know about the one marijuana being the most violent drug in history, and this one that I can't read it because everybody else is blocking it. But I like the one about the Negro entertainers, you know, having women tap their feet. And I said, you know, I'm guilty on that one too. I can't remember too many times I've heard a really great black band and going, "You bet my feet are tapping." You know, I just love that stuff. So there you get a sense of here. This is what these people are talking about when they started writing these laws. Some of this, in fact, Anslingers, much of Anslinger's really horrible quotes. I have a really long list of that you can have. It'll be part of the attachments that Suzanne will be sending out to us. But I've got probably a list of about 10, 15 quotes, and you can see that these people are saying are just horrible, horrible things. And these are things that are seeded into law, particularly the laws that are prior to 1950. And so, you know, by the deeds and they're knowing, by the words showing you know them. What about the legacy? What's the outcome of this? Well, we know what the outcome of it is now, and sitting here in 2020. It's 2020 to us, and then the outcome is just the outcome is racist, and the outcome is because they say, you know, in computing, you know, garbage in, garbage out. You know, garbage into these particular laws, and the garbage that comes out of them are the results of the legacy here, and it's really very, very, very tragic. You know, 1/5 of the incarcerated population is serving time for drugs. You know, there are 1.5 million or 1.1 million are on parole. Black Americans are 4 times more likely to be arrested on marijuana charges than their white peers. But between the black population, the white population, there's really not that much difference in the usage rates. In fact, last time I looked, the usage rate for whites was about a few points higher than it is for blacks. Blacks are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated. 80% of the people serving time in federal drug offense are black or Latino. I mean, you could go on here, and like I say, in the handout that you'll get from this presentation, you can see a few more bullet points, and I'll have to point this out to you. Some of these bullet points come for what is the Center for American Progress, and I kid you not, is that not the Koch brothers thing? Koch brothers nonprofit? Because I read that, and this is if you go there, you go. So this is some of the best outline of just the egregiousness of the over incarceration of America, particularly when it comes to racial minorities. So I do have to credit them for this. I should have put a little footnote there, and you'll see that though in your handout. So we know 3 things then. We know, yes, in deeds, in words, and in legacy, the drug war is racist. The war on drugs is racist. Yes, it is. And so finally, the way to end racism, in my view, is to end the war on drugs. Black Lives Matter. That's it.
Okay, you're good. Thank you, Mary Jane. Does anybody have any comments or questions about her presentation?
You don't know this stuff. I tell them this crew doesn't know. I could just have a few.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll wait for you.
No, I was going to cover, if there's somebody who has a question particularly about the presentation, I'm happy to answer it, but you wanted me to go on, and I see now it's 10 until, so I thought I'd cover a couple more things about drug policy that, Mark Stansberry raised his hand.
Yeah, and Mary Jane, that's exactly where I was hoping you could move towards, exactly what you just said, so thank you.
Okay. A couple things then. This is I just kind of have a little personal bullet point here. No particular order. first of all, if anybody follows me, I don't know if you read my stuff, if you follow me, you might remember my June article where I said that the Board of Pharmacy, because it was including 4 little words into the definition of edibles as attractive to children. It was a part of this thing called the Common Sense Initiative, and it had to be reviewed, and then the public could comment on it. And then finally, you know, if it goes back before the board passes it, and then it becomes part of the regulations that govern the Ohio Medical Marijuana Control Program. And so we became alarmed at the beginning of June that, we became alarmed at the beginning of June that that particular language, and I don't really have it before me right now, but it was something like candies, cookies, and other confectionaries that would be attractive to children. And if that were the case, that eliminates the edibles, you know, from the dispensaries, whether it's gummies or candy bars or what have you, because those products are offered by dispensaries. And I talked to a couple of dispensary owners, or at least the managers there, and they were concerned about this. Well, just long story short, the Board of Pharmacy met earlier this week, and those 4 little words were not in the final draft of the regulations for children. In fact, they actually reverted the language back to what it was originally in statute. So I take it to mean that I don't know if it's me personally, maybe it's a group of us who did this. You know, social activism through the free press works. Got what we wanted. Okay, so that's victory number 1. There's a big talk these days about decrim. In fact, there's a move afoot, I think, in other states and in Ohio, to revise the drug laws, both the marijuana laws and the laws governing drugs in general, to take them away from being felonies where you're putting people in jail, incarcerating them, to fines and diversion into treatment and things like that. I think it was May, Juanita Brent, who is a Democratic representative from the Cleveland area, had a bill ready to introduce that would have decriminalized marijuana. I think it's generally, Amy's are really our go-to person. She just spoke. She decrimmed what we call decrimmed Norwood, making, I think, 200 grams of marijuana is no fine, no time. That's like up to 7 ounces, something roughly like that. I think, I'm not sure Juanita Brent actually got any co-sponsors on her bill, but what did end up happening was the Ohio Senate appeared to take up the mantle on this one, and with about a week ago, within the last week, passed a bill 28-5, an amazing number for an all-Republican body. That means that most of the Republicans, probably all the Democrats and most of the Republicans, went along with this. And this is a pretty broad-based decrim bill, probably not as broad-based as I personally would write it, but I think it does the same thing with the 200 grams, no fine, no time. It's going to do that with many personal possession of even heroin and other drugs, so that they don't go into the felony range without, let's say, repeat violations, or without quantities large enough to indicate dealing or diversion. They would divert those into, instead of incarceration, being felonies and going for incarceration, those would be misdemeanors, and as I say, would go, they like drug courts. I'm not a fan of drug courts, but they would go to drug courts, go to treatment, or they would be a fine, something like that, and would no longer be felony jailable offenses. So that's a good development. Apparently, it's passed the Senate. It now goes to the House, and I think there's some thinking that it will be heard in October, possibly passed before the election. That's always up in the air in this day and age, but that's where it's at. And I think there's pretty good signs that it could easily pass the House, because they kind of in tandem, they're both really very heavily dominated by Republicans. The clincher will be, will DeWine sign the bill? And that I really don't know the answer to. You know, I think we'd have to wait till we got there to see what he would do. He's been kind of unpredictable lately, I'd say. Federally, I think federal is where actually change has to occur with regard to marijuana. I don't think we have time to go into the other acts that have been introduced into the House, mostly for marijuana, the U.S. House. But I do think you probably know, you've probably heard this, that there are some efforts to put this in these stimulus packages. And then also with regard to hemp, because hemp is a legal product now, it was able to get some of those small, at least eligible to apply for some small business loans. I think maybe a couple of companies did actually get some of that money. We know the rest of it all went to Trump's buddies, so there's that. But that's a little status there. Finally, the Ohio Medical Marijuana Control Program, circling back around to that again. Just add how to pronounce this, cachexia, I think it is, as a qualified condition, which is basically nausea, vomiting, and wasting syndrome that's associated with cancer, chemotherapy, and things like that. It's not a huge addition. Some have said it's really already there in the form of the other conditions, but hey, it's the first step forward because this is the first condition that will have been added to the list since the inception of the bill. Unfortunately, they denied anxiety and autism. Juanita Brandt did introduce a bill to add autism to the program, but again, being that she's a Democrat in the House, I don't think she's going to get a lot of traction on it. But they have a really, I think, dynamic group of people who are empowering the autism, so that may well get there. Anxiety is something, I mean, I can't see why you can't all have cannabis for anxiety right now during the COVID crisis. A lot of people would feel a whole lot better. All right, that's what I know. If there's any questions for me now, maybe there is, please let me know.
Questions?
Thank you, Mary Jane.
Any questions on the state of marijuana in the Buckeye State? And that is my favorite quote. Harvey and I had a whole scenario. There's been 5 Jim Crows. Well, the first one was just chattel slavery. The second one was traditional Jim Crow. But the third Jim Crow really comes out of the Cold War, Anslinger, and people of color being harassed by the drug trade everywhere, and really the rise of the cartels. But then the direct attack on the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, and then finally the whole kind of Ronald Reagan bogus war on drugs as a way to win elections, as a way to lock up people of color and Black people so they can keep them from voting at a higher rate. So appreciated your analysis. Anyone with questions for Mary Jane?
Did you have another person? Was Angelica going to speak?
Angelica, where is Angelica?
She's there.
Have a few words, Angelica.
I'm here. I was muted. Honestly, I have a really long medical story, and I was admitted to the hospital on the 7th. So, and I stayed on the 8th. So the 8th was my birthday, and I thought, I'm 32 now, and like, it's no big deal to be in the hospital on your birthday. So I thought, in order for me to get the best care, I'm an epilepsy patient. I'm more of a seizure disorder patient and a brain cancer patient. So I was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2008, terminal brain cancer, and I've been fighting it this whole time. I'm the longest living patient with my diagnosis. Apparently, with my kind of cancer, everybody passes away within the first 2 years, and it has been close to 13 years for me. I work full-time in the ER, but as of the 1st of this month, I became unemployed because I didn't know, but I fought for the past few years in work, just getting to work and fighting through it, the pain and everything. But it turns out I make the dollar same amount of money on disability than not. So I thought, might as well take the time and heal while on chemotherapy. And everything, all of the stuff that I'm doing. I didn't really have anything prepared today because, like I said, I had a seizure a couple of days ago, which I have very strange seizures. I was awake with it, able to talk the whole time on the specific seizure that I had a few days ago, but the whole right side of my body was numb and limp, and it was basically like I had a stroke, but I didn't. So therefore I didn't really have anything planned to speak about. I was going to speak about my medical conditions. So I guess, that's it. But with them reprinting my skull and all of the medical cannabis recommendations that I've had through the state of Ohio, through the doctors and through the National Institute of Health, they believe that cannabis is the best medication for me also. Every other medication and chemotherapy has failed. So cannabis has worked, and I'm the longest living patient with my diagnosis. Also, the only patient that is here because of cannabis, I believe. So it's just been a crazy past 12 years with this diagnosis. But like I said, I didn't really have a full speech or subject, because when I had the seizure, I kind of wiped everything away and kind of just was focusing on getting back to normal, which I kind of feel back to normal now. I still have to do some therapy and boost my muscle strength, because that's kind of went off flaccid, and it's kind of like I had a stroke, but shown on the MRI and CAT scans, I did not have a stroke. I've had a very, very strange medical history. So it's almost like the doctors don't know. The National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland is where I've been going recently, because OSU and all of the hospitals in Central Ohio have no clue what to do. And National Institute of Health is now infested with COVID. So I was there in December and January to kind of check in and meet all the new doctors. And I was supposed to go every other month, but they've been calling me and canceling my appointments, which is strange, because I hear that a couple of the physicians there, NIH, have gotten COVID while treating these patients. So I think they kind of shut me down from going there until they get this clear, but they say it's going to be 16, 18 months before they will allow me to go back to NIH. So everything's just kind of up in the air. I have no sign of brain cancer right now because of the chemotherapy that's worked, the cannabis that has worked. Everything has worked in my favor, and I'm just so appreciative of that. It's just been a crazy time. Medical cannabis is, I have, I think, 4 diagnoses that I can use medical cannabis for, and wasting syndrome was one of them. So that was a new one. When they put that one on there, I was like, oh my gosh, now I've grown the amount of diagnoses that I could use. And it's been a crazy, crazy ride. I'm in the process of starting a book, because I don't even feel like I could talk fully about everything that's happened. It's just been wild, just absolutely wild.
So you're a cannabis success story. We're very,
Yeah,
very
we're glad you're with
multiple
us.
times.
Yeah, look forward to you coming back with your book and reading from it and dialoguing with us.
Yes, be well, and let us know when that book is done so we can promote it out to this group.
Yes, absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for a marijuana cannabis success story?
I just want to say good for you. Keep fighting.
Thank you.
You're like a shining light to what can be done.
Thank you. That's what all of my doctors tell me too. And it's so strange. When I walk in there, I don't give them a chance to talk a whole bunch first. I tell them this is what I need and this is what I read about, because I'm always reading these clinical trials and what had been done with them. And my doctors are just so amazed, because I shouldn't even be alive, let alone so with it. And like they reprinted my skull 2 years ago. Like that, I'm still kind of freaked out about that. Like they mailed it from Germany. Like that was like, I have the strangest, most weird, complicated medical story And nobody has no idea unless I tell them, because everybody thinks I look completely normal. Everything's completely normal. But I just kind of sit back and smile because it is funny.
It's great. It's great.
Well, thank you so much. Mary Jane, did you have anything to wrap up? It's 9 o'clock now, and we got a couple of announcements for people to give here at the end for everyone.
I just want to thank you guys for hosting us tonight. I want to thank Amy for coming tonight and talking about Peggy Sue and Glenn's story. I think you guys, if you feel so inclined, have some time this week, get your letters out to that horribly corrupt judge and prosecutor in Mercer County. Actually, the org wrote a letter to them 2 years ago. That's how long this is going on. But thank you, Bob and Suzanne. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Victoria. And then thank you, Angelica, and everyone else for coming tonight and listening and absorbing and having some. Do you think that guys? Do you think this is as good as the ones in person at the big house over there? You think they're still as good on the cyber side, or do you miss that good food, all that food they used to lay out there? Come on.
Of course, we are worried. We heard
all that good vegan food.
Smoking pot in our backyard.
Oh,
so
no.
we're investigating.
Yeah, we seriously haven't cleaned our house since the last salon, so that was the only time we cleaned.
Oh.
If it ever comes back, that's enough have to get down to it. So Pat Morita, you wanted to give an announcement?
Yeah, so some of us, I'm working with Mark, and we're going to host this year the 75th anniversary. It's of the Hiroshima Nagasaki bombings, and so we're hoping because of that big number that we can attract some media attention and get some notices out about what's going on in the community besides just the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But we're going to host it August 6th on Thursday, and it's going to be at 6 o'clock, and we're going to have it at Washington Gladden Social Justice Park, which is on Broad Street at the corner of Cleveland Avenue, and it's right next to the First Community Church, or First Congregational Church. And Mark has a display, I think many of us have seen it, about 30 large posters that show what's been show the pictures of the people and what happened on that fateful day, fateful 2 days between August 6th when Hiroshima was bombed and August 9th when Nagasaki was bombed. So there's a spot there where we can set up this display, and right now we're planning, if the weather's nice, to have this display up during the afternoon so people can come and see it there. And if you don't mind, I'll read you a statement about this. We're a diverse group of people who share the common goals of ridding the world of the threat posed by nuclear weapons and bringing justice to communities affected by nuclear weapons testing, production, and use. We recognize that people of color were the target of the 1945 bombs and subsequent bomb testing. We acknowledge the suffering of Japanese Americans ripped from their homes and placed in internment camps during the war. We celebrate the United Nations International Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and the 39 nations that have ratified it since it was adopted in 2017, which is pretty exciting. That's happened pretty fast. And it's really interesting. I think Ireland is about the only country, European country, that has ratified it, which is small countries in the developing world that have ratified it. But so we eagerly await the treaty entering into force when 50 nations have ratified it. And so that's not long. There's only 11 left. So that's going to be very exciting when the parties to the treaty will prohibit all activities related to nuclear weapons when the treaty comes into force. Nuclear weapons will be stigmatized and individual nations protected from retaliation. So that's quite important. And there's a number of things that that will be disallowed, such as the United States cannot move nuclear weapons through these countries, that sort of thing, as well as the countries will not be able to make parts and participate in any way in the making of nuclear weapons. Last but not least, we recognize the connection between the obscene budgets for weapons and war making and the lack of funding for education, housing, healthcare, and other public services. We acknowledge our common understanding that inequality can only be maintained through the use of violence and coercion, which I think is really important. I mean, that's how it's maintained. They can't have all the resources without and deprive the rest of us from them without the use of violence. We recognize the humanity of every person and vow to continue to work together to end inequality in whatever form it takes. So we're going to be there on August 6th. And what we're looking for people from other organizations that are willing to come out for about 5 minutes and talk about their organization and what they do and its relationship to inequality and its relationship to the military industrial complex and anything you want to say. So we're looking for organizations that are involved in all the things that we've been talking about tonight. Mark, did you want to add anything?
Okay, you did a great job. I just wanted to say it's 12 to 7. We'll probably be 12 to 7. We'll post up the stuff around 12 at the Justice Park and keep it going till 7. The event, you say, yes, is 6 o'clock. So that's I confirm that. So please, anybody come out. We want to make it a big event. Yeah, BLM encompassed action this year, but it is 75th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We've tried to make it a significant event. The 70, we did a very big event. We're hoping to make it a nice commemoration. But as Pat was alluding, there's some serious policy agenda that we need to push right now. So come out and support if you can. Thanks.
And the history is really, people don't understand what happened there, but the technology gets ahead of, can we do it, gets ahead of should we do it. And so all this money went into the development of the nuclear bombs, and then the project, it just seemed like it had its own inertia. And there were 3 bombs, and they had to use them all. The first one they used, and they bombed New Mexico is a majority state, and at Alamogordo, there are still radioactive contamination in that area. It caused a whole lot of illness from, and it was Native peoples and Latinx peoples that bore the brunt of that. And before that happened, scientists calculated that it was possible that it could ignite, an atomic explosion could ignite the ozone layer and incinerate the earth. But they still went ahead and did it because they figured it was a small chance. And so the experiment was worth it. Even the fact that it could have destroyed all life on earth, there was a possibility. They went ahead and did this. And then they had 2 other bombs. Now the war had really already been won because the United States was bombing Japan with impunity. Their Air Force was really practically non-existent. And there were 7 cities that the United States did not bomb because they wanted them pristine so they could calculate the, you know, the effects of the bomb. So the first bomb was a uranium bomb that they dropped on Hiroshima. And then they had to hurry and drop the second bomb before Japan surrendered, because they really wanted the differences between the between the uranium bomb and the plutonium bomb. So I don't know how I got muted. Am I still, can you hear me?
Yep.
That was odd.
Go ahead. You're good.
So, yeah, so they dropped this second bomb, and, you know, a couple 100,000 people died in that. And then, of course, it was people of color too, that they didn't, of course, it's hard to distinguish Germans from other white people. So they didn't, there was no internment of Germans during World War II. So anyway, we're excited about the event, and I will send around, and we can, if people are willing to pass the word along and get back to me if your organization wants to come out and say something.
Yeah, and Free Press has been a long-standing supporter of the ongoing commemoration events annually, and it's really appreciated Bob and Suzanne's, especially Suzanne's more than Bob's. No, I'm teasing. Contribution to the events. But yeah, Pat, thank you so much for putting this out, and your instigation. I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen very well. Thank you.
And
yeah, and we'd love to have somebody talk about the Free Press.
Yep.
And Harvey has written a book called Killing Our Own that kind of describes all the tests that were done on the population.
Right, and I've actually written about the key role of Patel.
Yep.
And the fact that we had a nuclear trigger factory in Columbus.
Yeah, speaking of Harvey, Harvey was always involved when he was in town and whenever he could be. And that brother has a gigantic voice, and it's always a pleasure to have him around.
He might be back for that. You never know. We got one more announcement that I know of, Sandy, and we've gone way over time. So let's try to keep things brief.
I'll make this really short. Move to amend, which wants an amendment that says corporations are not people and money is not speech, has started a program, and it's called Speaking of Democracy. And then each time we have it, we'll be covering a different topic. And our next topic will be, they're always on Thursdays. The next topic will be July 23rd, Thursday, July 23rd from 7 to 8. And it's going to be, Becca Polar is going to be our host or a presenter. And she's going to talk about this natural gas plant that the state and the gas and oil industry, kind of one and the same, want to build on OSU's main campus. So many of you might know about that already. If you don't, pay attention to the Facebook page, Move to Amend, Central Ohio Facebook page. I don't have it up yet, but I will in the next couple of days. I also posted the Move to Amend link. And if you agree that corporations are not people and money is not speech, sign this. We don't send out a lot of emails, but your signature helps a lot because it says, hey, there's another, there's all these Americans who want this amendment. And so our politicians need to pass it. So Move to Amend Central Ohio, or go to that link, sign your name, get everybody else to sign it, and then tune in to the Central Ohio. Bob Rommel will post it in the Free Press. Connie Hammond will have it in her email. It'll be everywhere. Hopefully on the radio. Tim?
Yeah, Bob just interviewed Becca on his radio show that played
Becca and
yesterday.
Nikki with YDSA. Yeah, they were just on.
So that'll be you can listen to that podcast on WCRSFM.org.
Yeah, we'll hopefully get a PSA out talking about the event.
Thank you, Sandy. Chuck, Lynn, did you have something? I saw you pop in towards the end. Maybe not. Anybody else with announcements?
Suzanne, I don't know if Chuck Chuck's on, but I can do the Simply Living announcement.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's the story of, oh, hi, Chuck.
I got
This-
unmuted.
The story of plastic with a panel, and Chuck can tell you the panel tomorrow at 2. You can check out the Simply Living Facebook. And Chuck, you want to add?
Okay, yeah, the panel is Sarah Club, Bexley, the plastic deal, and this Randy Pokladnik, who's amazing. She's a research scientist, activist, and really knows all about plastic. She's got a series of slides we're going to put on there. You can't really sign up to see the movie because we're closed it out. It's so many people, but anybody can join the discussion at the Simply Living Facebook page. But even more than that, since most of you know plastic's a hell of a problem, we're Simply Living going to start a series of hangouts starting Wednesday, the 15th. At 7 o'clock on Zoom. So I think it's on Eventbrite, Facebook, wherever, if you want to just drop in or email me, I'll send you the link. And we're just going to be hanging out, and I'm going to do a short thing, not a major thing, but talk a little bit about the public banking movement. We're trying to get, I want to show a little short video, and I want to start promoting that. We're going to have a national resource, do a public banking town hall, probably in the September, October. Thanks.
Well, it's impressive that you have filled up your with viewers. You reached your max.
Yeah, I think the way it works is that I've been working all day trying to figure out how to do it on Facebook and YouTube. It's driving me nuts. I should learn from you guys, but in any case, it is a challenge, but the distributor must be promoting it because a lot of the people, I mean, there's upwards of 70 people that are officially linked, and we're only supposed to do 50 because people watch it more than once, and so we've kind of pushed the limit. But a lot of those people are from around the country, which is another good example of how, like this event, people can find out about cool things that are going on that affect things nationally. I mean, the plastic issue is a national problem. We've got people talking about what we're doing locally, but hey, it's of interest to all sorts of people to watch that film. So more and more, that's the way they're doing it. You get a link to the film. I watched one last night. There's a climate virtual climate film festival that Environment America is putting on. It's a great film. They forget to mention about move to amend and what we really need to do to get the politicians to make a change. But it's a good series they're doing, a half a dozen films in July.
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody. I'm going to send my usual email out that'll sum all this up, so you can have all the links as soon as it downloads. Not as soon as it downloads, because probably will at least be tomorrow, Monday. But anyway, watch for that. And if there's nothing else, we can just say thanks for attending the July 2nd Saturday Salon. There's Stuart.
Oh my gosh.
Stuart Margaret. There's Brian. Nice to see you, Brian.
Which Brian? Oh my goodness. Yes. Hi. Yes. Guys need cleaning wipes. I have extras.
Yeah, when you talk about,
I'm pretty sure the carriage house will need some when it reopens.
Yeah, that's true.
Like a year from now.
Hold on to
But yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm stuck here at home because the buses stopped running 2 hours ago.
Well, darn.
Things changed since my article. Except they added the zoo bus last week. I don't know why.
Aha. Well, we got a lot of other friends on here. We got Bob Ream. Haven't seen you for a while.
You should click on everyone on the way out.
It doesn't.
Light here.
Nothing happens. They have to.
Charlie, you're in the dark.
Oh, there's.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to find a little better light. There I go.
Train and Kim
Okay.
driving to Indiana. There's Charlie. We have Charlotte Owens. Haven't seen her face, but I saw her pop up there.
Not really.
Hey, Joe.
Cliff and Sibley. And let's see, Greg Kilcup.
Hey, it's dark out in the backyard here. Otherwise, I'd wave hi to you to the camera. But I'm right here under the apple tree in the backyard.
Well, what we would normally be doing right now would be listening to Greg's band play in our backyard. So it's kind of sad that that's not happening this year for our summer outdoor salons. We really miss them. So we miss your band too, Greg. Maybe you could just play for us for our Zoom salon at some point.
Yes, well, the new digital frontiers, we're now playing with each other by Jamulus. So maybe more on that at some point. Real-time a music collaboration at a distance. Very low
That would
latency.
be
Lower than
cool.
Zoom.
That would be
But,
so
cheers.
cool.
Thanks for hosting. See you next month.
All right, and we got Joe Motel. Joe Motel has been so active. If you're for his friend on Facebook, you see everything that Joe Motel's been up to.
Yeah, Joe kicks ass on Facebook.
And Juanita, Free Press board member and host of The Pink Pill on WGRN. We got Steve Caruso and probably Connie Mixter as well. Nice to see you. Lynn Stan we saw. Marley, all the way from Texas. Glad you could join us.
Well, I'm glad this is my only connection with Columbus at this point.
Well, it's great to see you. I'm glad you can join us. I don't think so.
Don't forget the Zoom bomber that we had.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That just, that's really interesting. We finally made the big time, right? Nobody's tried to Zoom bomber yet. Right?
Got us a Zoom
But
bomber.
it sounded like 11-year-olds, so I don't know if we made the big
Zoom bombers.
Well, I don't know how we can avoid that in the future, but now we know we can just remove them. And we have Connie Harris with us. I don't see any way for her to speak. I don't know if we can see her. She might just be on her phone, but welcome Connie Harris, who's probably up in Mansfield. Winnie Worth.
Hello, Connie.
We heard from Winnie Worth and Tim Chavez. We haven't seen you.
Hey, Connie. Hi, Tim.
Tekla. Hi, Tim. And we got Tekla. Haven't seen her, but we see her name there. So great to see everybody with us. And there's somebody new. I thought that a name I hadn't seen before. Of course, maybe that was the Zoom bomber.
ZB. Zoom bomber.
ZB.
Who is JJ?
JJ is probably Verbs, Vegas. Probably Jesse Cloth. I don't know if you've seen him at our salons. He's a rapper. Big guy, lives across the street. That's who he has different names. One of them is JJ Verbino. That's his Facebook name. That's who I assumed that was. But that wasn't the Zoom bomber. The Zoom bomber was Vance Walker and David Kay and Chris somebody. There was another Chris. So yeah, I was able to jump on and remove them because I didn't recognize their names. Now, sadly, other people might have tried to get in the salon that I didn't recognize their names, and I might have rejected them during that time. So I feel bad about that. I don't know how to really tell whether somebody's going to be a Zoom bomber or not.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was interesting. So thank you, Train, for helping train me over the last couple of days. And I was like freaking out. Didn't really know what I was doing. Usually Train's our host. But
Wish I could have helped more, but we're on the road.
yeah, we see. And it still looks really light out where you
Yeah,
are.
and are you sure you're not coming into Los Angeles bringing in a couple of keys?
That's right.
Mr.
Where are you?
Man.
Is that a U-Haul?
Yeah, it's a U-Haul. Definitely a U-Haul.
We are 2 hours and 22 minutes away from Springfield, Illinois. That's our first step.
But you're
And then
coming
it's going to
back.
be 3 more days to Sacramento, California.
But
That's our destination.
you're coming back.
Yes, we're moving my son and my mother-in-law to California, where they kind of came from.
Okay.
But me and Jimmy will fly.
They're duct taped in the back of the truck.
Yeah. Oh shit.
My mom's behind us going really slow.
They're following. They have a caravan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we'll keep in touch, but we'll be back in Columbus Saturday the 18th.
All right.
So hey,
Stay fun.
wish
Stay
me
fun.
birthday. It's my 50th birthday, Wednesday, July 15th.
All right, let's sing happy birthday.
Oh shit! Happy
again.
birthday, dude.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not gonna do anything fun because of COVID, but who knows? It'll be nice to get some Facebook shout outs from y'all.
You
Yeah.
do something, dude. You do something.
You're just a baby. Just a youngster.
Yeah.
Oh, so is Suzanne, but
He's a rookie.
You know, I'm old enough to be your mother, Brian.
yeah, that's exactly what she said.
I'm old enough to be your grandmother.
Well, I'm the same age as Sandy, so I'm old enough to be a grandmother too. I was just with
Who's
that part.
Bambi?
Sandy Bolzenius. She's my
Oh,
Not Bambi, Sandy.
who's Tammy?
We're only 29, both of us.
That's
Sandy and
right. Times 29.
There you go.
I just celebrated the 39th anniversary of my 39th birthday.
All right.
Damn.
Woo!
What day, Pat? What day is your birthday?
Oh, it's in November, but that was my last birthday.
Well, we'll have to try to remember that this year. Well, I think that next month we're going to talk a little bit about elections and some activity that Bob and Harvey are involved in around the state trying to organize. We don't know whether it's going to be an election in person or online or not online or by mail, but we got to be ready for each circumstance to make sure they don't steal this one. So that's going to be one of the topics next time. But until then.
Bye-bye.
See y'all.
So, yes.
Everybody.
Everybody be safe, all right?
Will we find out, like, how to get a ballot online then?
Hopefully they'll tell us, but you know they can change their mind.
Theoretically, they're going to
Call them right now.
Request an absentee ballot.
I don't think you can yet, but
Well, supposedly they're going to send them to everyone in the state, but we'll see. In the primary, you
Oh
had
my
to- you
gosh.
had to request.
How did Ohio become so bougie like the West Coast?
I don't think we are.
Actually,
Washington, Oregon, California. Gosh.
Yeah, it's actually the Secretary of State, despite being a Republican, is only partially reactionary.
well, we'll go over more of this next time.
Yeah, it'll all be in next month's discussions.
Okay. See ya.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. Great to see everybody. Mask up. Resist the draft. Don't
I'll
register.
put the
Yes, resist the draft. Go register. Vote.
one of
Wear masks. Save our season.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, Brian. Gene Smith says he doesn't think we're going to have a season.
Might not have it.
Oh, look. Free Press Columbus Police. Now I'm viewing Bob and Suzanne's screen.
That's one of our covers that I was going to bring up, but we were being Zoom bombed at the time.
Oh my goodness. I know. Ohio State had to cancel their game against Columbus State because they're now conference only.
Well, and we might have to change the name of our business going on here and take the word Columbus out of it.
Uh-oh.
That probably would have been the print issue for July if there was one. The print issue.
Right.
Tecumseh.
Goodbye, Columbus.
Yeah. There's Bob.
Yes. It's time to start throwing our chairs at Christopher Columbus, like the Steve Wilkos show.
What'd you say, Steve Curry?
Steve Wilkos, but oh my goodness, I just realized there are like two Bobs. Either that or there's some
If you look at that one,
doppelganger.
Bob's
Holy fuck, there are two Bobs. Okay, which one is married to
two
Suzanne?
The two Bobs.
I can be there too.
Oh my God, there are two Suzannes. Oh my goodness.
I was real paranoid.
no.
Usually,
What is this like? What is this like? Comedy of errors?
no, usually train hosts
The twins.
Usually train hosts the meeting, and I was all paranoid that it wasn't going to work, so I wanted
But
to
what
have
if
it
I
up.
was arguing with myself?
Look how you're stuck there.
You're not Dan Dugan, Bob.
Whoa.
Looking in a mirror.
All right, so 9:30, we're going to end this meeting. It's all been recorded, and we will send it out.
All right. Well,
Nice
have
seeing
fun.
y'all. All
All
right.
right.
Have a good one, y'all.
At least I don't have to take home leftover vegan soup.
It's true. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.